Chapter 1. The Crack in the Frame. The morning light slipped through the blinds like it always did, thin golden blades cutting across the quiet of our bedroom. The alarm clock blinked 6:03 a.m. I woke up before it rang, the way I always did. Habit from years of service. Old soldiers don't need alarms. Our minds are wired to the dawn. Beside me, Lena stirred under the covers, her back turned. Her hair spilled over the pillow, dark, glossy, and tangled in the kind of way that used to make me smile. Used to. Lately, she'd been falling asleep late, sometimes after midnight, whispering into her phone in the hallway, saying it was just a work thing. I believed her. At least, I'd wanted to. "Morning," I said softly. She didn't answer right away. Just a faint hum, then a sigh. "Yeah, morning." No smile. No kiss. Just the sound of her bare feet padding across the hardwood floor. She headed straight for the bathroom, door closing behind her with a soft click. I lay there staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, too quiet for a home with a 7-year-old. Maddie's giggles usually filled these mornings, but she'd stayed at my mom's overnight after a sleepover. The silence gave me time to think, and thinking was dangerous these days. I swung my legs out of bed, joints popping as I stood. My old knee injury flared, souvenir from Kandahar. I rubbed it absent-mindedly, glanced at the framed photos on the dresser. One of me in uniform, Lena holding Maddie at my homecoming ceremony. My medals gleamed in the picture, so did her smile. I used to think that smile could carry me through anything. Now, even the photo felt heavy with irony. Lena emerged 20 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even there. "You're up early," she said. "Always am," I replied. She smirked faintly. "Right. Soldier mode." Her tone was teasing, but it carried a sting, like she was mocking the discipline she once admired. I tried to lighten the air. "You heading to work already?" "Yeah," she said, brushing past me toward the closet. "Big client today. Don't wait up for dinner." I frowned. "Didn't you say that yesterday?" She froze for a moment, then shot me a look over her shoulder. "Yeah, Logan, because my job doesn't run on your schedule. Some of us have to hustle to make a living." Her words hit harder than they should have. I work long hours, too. Private security wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. "Didn't mean it like that," I muttered. She ignored me, pulling a navy blouse over her shoulders. Then came the perfume, new scent, sharp and expensive, not the floral one I'd given her last Christmas. I caught the name on the bottle. Midnight Ember. "You change perfumes?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Yeah, wanted something different. It's strong." She paused just long enough to say, "Guess you'll get used to it," before heading downstairs. Her heels clicked across the tile floor. Each sound felt like a countdown, tick, 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 to something I didn't want to admit was coming. I followed her into the kitchen. Coffee was already brewing, the rich smell cutting through the tension. She poured herself a mug, not offering me one. "I'm running late," she said, glancing at her watch. "You've been running late a lot." She turned sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" I hesitated, meeting her eyes, brown, once soft, now guarded. "It means you seem distracted lately. Distant. Maybe I'm just tired, Logan," she said. "Maybe everything doesn't have to be some interrogation." I felt my jaw tighten. "I didn't." She cut me off, slamming her mug onto the counter. "God, you're impossible sometimes." Her voice echoed through the kitchen. Then just as quickly, she sighed and softened it. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I just have a lot going on." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I get it, but I didn't." She kissed my cheek, a quick, empty gesture, and grabbed her purse. "Love you," she said over her shoulder. "Love you too," I murmured, but the words felt automatic, hollow. The door closed behind her. The sound lingered longer than it should have. For a while, I just stood there, staring at the half-finished cup of coffee she'd left behind. My reflection wavered in the dark surface, tired eyes, worn face, a man out of sync with his own home. I busied myself with chores, feeding the dog, straightening Maddie's toys, checking my work emails. Routine kept me sane, but something inside me kept replaying the morning like a tape on loop. The tone in her voice, the perfume, the way she didn't look back when she left. By 8 a.m., I was getting ready to leave for my shift when I heard it. A faint buzz from the kitchen counter. Her phone. Lena never forgot her phone. I froze, staring at it. The screen lit up again, vibrating against the marble surface. One new message. I shouldn't look. I knew that. But my gut, the same instinct that kept me alive overseas, told me otherwise. I stepped closer. The contact name read, RD message preview. Can't stop thinking about last night. Time slowed. My throat went dry. Another buzz followed. You make me crazy, baby. Text me when he's gone. I felt something cold spread through my chest, part fury, part disbelief. I didn't touch the phone, didn't scroll, didn't unlock it. Just stared at those words until the screen went dark again. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, slowly, I reached for the edge of the counter, gripping it to steady myself. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. Lawnmowers hummed, sprinklers hissed, the sound of everyday life going on as if mine hadn't just cracked in half. I looked toward the doorway where Lena had stood just minutes earlier, smiling, lying, pretending. I exhaled shakily and whispered to the empty room, not yet, because old soldiers don't panic. We observe, plan, and wait for the right moment to strike. He doesn't confront her. Not yet. The slow burn begins. Chapter 2. The Stranger in Blue. It started on an ordinary Tuesday evening, the kind of calm suburban night that lulls you into thinking everything's fine when it isn't. The sun was dipping low, painting the cul-de-sac gold, when Lena walked in with a man I'd never seen before. He wore a dark blue dress shirt rolled neatly to his elbows, a badge clipped to his belt, and a grin that said he was used to being admired. Confident, relaxed, like he owned whatever space he entered. Logan, Lena said, her voice a little too cheerful. This is Detective Ryan Davis. We met at yoga. He's helping me with that traffic ticket situation I told you about. I hadn't heard a word about any ticket. Detective, I said, offering a hand. Ryan's handshake was firm, too firm, one of those grips meant to test the other man. He looked me right in the eye, smiling just enough to make it feel like a challenge. Good to meet you, soldier, he said, glancing at the framed photo of me in uniform on the wall. Army, right? Was, I replied. Private sector now. He chuckled, leaning casually against the counter. Bet it's hard going from command and combat to office life. But hey, someone's got to keep things safe around here. His tone was light, but the jab landed. Lena didn't seem to notice, or maybe she pretended not to. She laughed at something he whispered, that breathy kind of laugh she hadn't used with me in months. So, I said, forcing calm, traffic ticket, huh? That's serious? Just a misunderstanding, Ryan said before she could answer. She was supposedly speeding through a school zone, but I'm helping her sort it out. You know how messy paperwork can get. Lena smiled at him, then at me. He's been a big help, Logan. I didn't want to bother you with it. Bother me, right? That's what husbands are for, getting in the way of other men helping their wives. I nodded. Appreciate you looking out for her, Detective. Ryan, he corrected. Detective sounds too formal. We're all friends here. The air between us thickened. I watched him glance toward Lena as she turned to pour coffee, his eyes tracing the small of her back in a way that made my stomach twist. She handed him a mug. Milk, no sugar, right? He grinned. You remembered. That hit me harder than I expected. Remembered. How many conversations had they shared that I wasn't part of? Ryan looked around our kitchen like he was assessing a crime scene. Nice place you got here. Cozy. Must be great for a family. It is, I said flatly. We built it together. Ah, he said, that grin tightening. Teamwork. Always important in a relationship. Lena blushed. Blushed. I'd seen her cheeks turn red like that in our first year together, back when we couldn't stop touching each other. Now it was for a man she'd known 2 weeks. The rest of the conversation was polite but sharp-edged. When he finally left, I stood at the window watching his car pull away. A black Dodge Charger. Loud engine, tinted windows. The kind of car that screamed authority and arrogance. Lena came up behind me. You okay? Yeah, I said. He's quite the personality. She smiled faintly. He's harmless, Logan. You're reading too much into it. Maybe I was, but my gut told me I wasn't. The next weekend, the neighbors hosted a barbecue. One of those loud beer and music afternoons where people pretended their lives were perfect. I was manning the grill when I heard his voice again, smooth, confident, unmistakable. Hey there, soldier. Mind if I grab a burger? Ryan Davis, dressed in jeans and a fitted t-shirt, badge glinting casually on his belt, like he needed everyone to know who he was. Lena was with him, of course. She looked surprised, but not enough. Didn't know you were invited, I said, flipping a burger a little too hard. Wasn't, he replied easily. Lena texted me the address. Said I should stop by. Lena gave me a quick, nervous smile. I thought it'd be fine, Logan. He lives nearby. Ryan chuckled, picking up a beer. Relax, man. I'm just here to enjoy the food, not write any tickets. He mingled like he'd been part of the neighborhood for years, shaking hands, laughing loudly, charming everyone in sight. But his attention always drifted back to Lena. Every time she spoke, he leaned closer. When she laughed, he brushed her arm. When she walked past him, his eyes followed. I saw it. Everyone saw it, but nobody said a word. At one point, he joined me by the grill, sipping his beer. You've done your duty? Huh, he said with that lazy grin. Served your country. That's respectable. Yeah, I said, tongs clenching in my hand. Something like that. He took another sip. Must be tough, though. Coming home, finding your place again. Guys like us, structured, disciplined, we struggle when the world stops needing us. I looked him dead in the eye. The world always needs men who know what they stand for. He smirked. Sure, as long as they remember when to stand down. Before I could reply, Lena called from across the yard, waving him over. He grinned, clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends, and walked to her side. The way she looked at him, eyes bright, lips curled, felt like a blade twisting under my ribs. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, whispering, laughing. At one point, he rested his hand on the small of her back as they posed for a photo. My fist tightened so hard I thought I'd break my own knuckles. When the barbecue wound down, Ryan tossed his beer bottle into the trash, wiped his hands, and turned to me. Pleasure meeting you again, Logan. You've done your duty, soldier. Let the professionals handle things now. He said it loud enough for me to hear, quiet enough that no one else did. Then he winked and walked away, his arm brushing against Lena's as they passed. The words stuck in my mind like poison. Chapter 3. Whispers and Wounds. The days that followed the barbecue crawled by like a slow infection. Something in the air between Lena and me had changed, thickened into a kind of silence that wasn't just quiet, it was hostile. The laughter in our home had gone. Even the sound of her footsteps upstairs seemed measured, distant, like she was living here but already gone. It started small, missed dinners, short answers, the kind of distance you can feel before you can explain. She'd say, I've got another late shift, and I'd nod. Then she'd come home past midnight, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. By the third week, I stopped asking questions. Not because I believed her stories, but because I didn't want to hear more lies. Instead, I began watching. Old habits came back fast. Observation, pattern recognition, the quiet art of noticing what others ignore. The Army had trained me to gather intel under stress, and I realized now that my own home had become a battlefield. I started small, phone logs, bank statements, subtle things. Lena's call history was mostly clean, but every few days, one number repeated. Unknown. Same time. Late night. Around the same hours she claimed to be at the office. I wrote it down. Every time. 8:47 p.m., late shift. 10:13 p.m., still wrapping up. 12:01 a.m., phone call. Every line in that notebook was another cut. Then there were the clues she didn't even try to hide. New clothes that appeared overnight. A bottle of red wine in the trash when she'd sworn she was too tired to drink. A text alert once flashed across her phone when she left it charging in the kitchen. RD, miss you already. That name again. RD, Ryan Davis. I didn't need proof to know, but proof is what I needed to act. One Thursday evening, after she left for another late shift, I tailed her car. My black pickup stayed several lengths behind her silver sedan, lights off as I followed through the edge of town. The night air was cool, the sky thick with clouds, good for staying unseen. She drove straight past her office building. Didn't even slow down. My pulse steadied, the way it used to before an operation. The mission part of my brain switched on, no emotion, just focus. She turned down a narrow road toward the outskirts, where the old Riverside Motel still flickered its neon sign. Vacancy. I parked down the block and waited. Minutes passed. Then, headlights swept across the lot. Ryan's black Dodge Charger. Even from the distance, I recognized the car. Sleek, arrogant, out of place in a cheap motel parking lot. He parked beside her sedan. She got out, laughing, hair pulled back, coat fluttering in the breeze. He stepped out too, smiling, confident, that same damn smirk I'd seen at the barbecue. They didn't go straight into her room. They stood close, whispering, her hand brushing his arm. When he leaned in to kiss her, she didn't hesitate. I didn't take a photo. Didn't need one. The image was carved into me already. But something else caught my eye, a red scarf hanging from his rearview mirror. Hers. I'd given it to her last winter. The sight of it there made my stomach twist. I sat there for 10 more minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then I drove away. No confrontation. No yelling. Just the hum of the engine and the sound of my heart pounding like gunfire in my ears. Back home, the house was dark, cold, silent. I opened my notebook again, wrote it all down. The date, the time, the place, every detail, every betrayal. Writing made it real, but it also gave me control. If I could catalog it, I could survive it. I didn't let emotion take over, not yet. That was a soldier's discipline. You stay calm under fire. You wait for the right moment to strike. Days blurred into nights. Lena came home at dawn sometimes, acting as if nothing was wrong. When I'd ask where she'd been, she'd roll her eyes. God, Logan, you're obsessed, she snapped one night. Do you really think I'm out doing something wrong? Are you? I asked quietly. She laughed, a sharp, cruel laugh I didn't recognize. You're paranoid. Maybe you should see someone about that. I wanted to tell her I'd seen everything, that I'd followed her, but saying it felt like losing control, like letting her know how deep the knife had gone. So I just looked at her, said nothing. That made her angrier. You just stare at me like I'm some suspect. Newsflash, soldier, this isn't the military. You can't interrogate your wife. Then she walked away, slamming the bedroom door behind her. The echo stayed long after she did. Ryan started showing up more often. At the grocery store, the park. Once, even outside our driveway, leaning against his car, pretending to text. Evening, Logan, he said, flashing that smirk. Just happened to be in the area. Sure you did, I said, my voice flat. He looked at me the way a predator sizes up prey. Don't take it personal. Some things just change with time. Before I could answer, Lena's car pulled in. She smiled too wide when she saw him, and something inside me went cold. They stood there talking, laughing, while I stood a few feet away, invisible in my own life. That night, when she came to bed, I didn't even move. She slid under the covers beside me, her perfume thick, unfamiliar. You're so tense lately, she murmured. Yeah, I said. Guess I'm just tired. She rolled over without another word. The next morning before sunrise, I went for a run. Long and hard. The cold air bit into my lungs, but I kept pushing. Each stride was a release, a way to silence the chaos in my head. When I got home, I hit the garage gym. The sound of fists slamming into the heavy bag echoed through the house. I trained like I was back on deployment, running, boxing, sweating until the anger turned to exhaustion. If pain was all I had left, then I'd use it. Because sometimes the only thing that keeps a man from breaking is remembering what he's capable of. Logan starts training again, running, boxing, old drills, trying to drown the pain. Chapter 4, The Storm Before the Raid. The storm didn't come all at once. It started with words, small, sharp, and deliberate. The kind that cut deeper than any blade. Lena had always had a temper, but lately it was something else. It was cruel, cold, calculated. It began one evening when I got home late from work. She was at the dining table, wine glass in hand, scrolling her phone. Didn't even look up when I walked in. Hey, I said, setting my keys down. You eat yet? Yeah, she replied flatly. Made myself something. Didn't know if you'd actually bother coming home. Her tone hit me like a slap. I was working overtime. You know that. She laughed, a bitter sound. Overtime? Or just avoiding being here? I paused, trying to measure my words. What's that supposed to mean? She finally looked up. It means this house feels like a bunker half the time. You barely talk, you barely smile, you're just, what's the word? A ghost. I stared at her, stunned. A ghost. Yeah, she said, swirling her wine. A washed-up soldier playing security guard while everyone else actually moves on with their lives. That one landed. She saw in my eyes and smiled like she'd scored a point. Ryan was right, she added under her breath, almost like she wanted me to hear. At least he has ambition. The room went quiet. My fists tightened to my sides, but I said nothing. Silence, in that moment, was my only armor. She wanted me to react. She wanted to see me crack. But I wouldn't give her that. A few nights later, I woke to the sound of her voice. Soft, low, but distinct. It was after midnight. The hallway light glowed under the bedroom door. She wasn't beside me. I sat up slowly, careful not to make the floorboards creak. Her voice carried down the hall, muffled, but sharp enough to pierce through the dark. No, he's fine. He's broken, Ryan. He won't fight back. The words froze me where I stood. My heart hammered as I leaned closer to the doorframe, listening. I'm telling you, she whispered. He's too proud to admit what's happening. He's harmless now. Just empty. A pause. Then a soft laugh, the kind that used to belong to me. You don't have to worry. He's not a threat. The line went quiet for a few seconds. I heard her sigh. I love you too, she said finally. Then the click of the call ending. I stepped back into the shadows, barely breathing. For a moment, I wanted to burst through that door and confront her, demand to know how she could speak about me like that, how she could betray me so completely. But I didn't. Not yet. I went back to bed and lay there in the dark, my mind moving like machinery. Every word she'd said replayed over and over. Broken. Won't fight back. If that's what she believed, she'd already made her first mistake. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The house was quiet, the air heavy. I brewed coffee, staring out the window as the first light crept over the horizon. Then I went to the closet, the one in the back of the office where I kept the things that mattered. I opened the safe. Inside, neat and untouched, were the remnants of my old life. My service medals, commendations, discharge papers, and a few photographs that reminded me who I used to be. I laid them out on the desk one by one. Each piece felt like a fragment of a man I'd buried too soon. Then I took out the small black notebook I'd been keeping, every late night, every lie, every date and time. I added one more line. Confirmed phone call, 0.43 hours. He's broken, Ryan. After that, I reached for the worn envelope taped beneath the drawer, a contingency I'd hoped never to need. Inside was a single card. On it, written in fading ink, one word. Phoenix. No address. No rank. No explanation. Just that name. I held it between my fingers for a long time. The memory of a voice, deep, calm, deadly efficient, echoed in my head. If you ever need to disappear, or if the war finds you again, call me. I slipped the card into my wallet. Then I gathered my medals and documents, wrapped them in a waterproof bag, and stored them under a loose floorboard in the garage. Years of training taught me one thing. When you're surrounded, you prepare for extraction before the ambush begins. That night, Lena didn't speak to me. She sat on the couch, texting with that same secretive smile. I didn't ask who it was. I just watched, memorizing everything, the angle of her phone, the time, her reflection in the window. Because a man who knows he's being hunted doesn't panic. He plans. And that's exactly what I was doing. Foreshadowing begins. A man pushed too far, but holding his cards close. Chapter 5, The Raid. The morning began like any other. Quiet, ordinary, deceptively calm. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor in golden stripes, and the faint hum of the coffee maker filled the air. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. Maddie was upstairs humming to herself as she brushed her hair. Lena was in the living room, scrolling her phone. I was just buttoning my shirt when I noticed her glance toward me, detached, expressionless. It was a look that told me something was coming, even if she didn't say it. My gut twisted the way it always did before the worst kind of storms. Then, from outside, came the sound of tires screeching. I froze. The quiet suburban morning shattered. Red and blue lights pulsed through the blinds, flooding the room in chaos. Sirens wailed, dogs barked, and before I could even reach the window, a deep voice thundered through a bullhorn. Federal warrant. Logan Steele, step outside. Hands where we can see them. Lena didn't flinch. She stood still, one hand resting on Maddie's shoulder as my daughter came running down the stairs, wide-eyed and frightened. "Mommy, what's happening?" she cried. Lena's tone was icy. "It's okay, baby. Just stay close to me." I moved toward the door, my instincts kicking in, assess, de-escalate, survive. But before I could even grab my wallet, the front door exploded inward. Boom! Wood splintered. Glass shattered. A flood of men in black tactical gear poured in, shouting orders. "Hands up! Down on the ground! Now!" Flashlights blinded me. The air filled with the smell of gun oil and boot polish. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from disbelief. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, hands raised. Ryan Davis stepped through the chaos like he owned it. Dressed in full SWAT armor, helmet off, his face carried that same smug grin I'd come to hate. "Morning, soldier," he said smoothly, his rifle slung across his chest. "Long time no see." "Ryan," I growled. "What the hell are you doing here?" He smirked. "Executing a federal warrant." "You've been a naughty boy, Logan." I stared at him, disbelief turning into rage. "What?" "Illegal arms possession," he said, flashing a fake-looking document. "Seems your military souvenirs aren't so legal after all." "This is bull." He cut me off, barking, "Take him." Two SWAT officers grabbed me, forcing me to my knees. I didn't resist, but my mind raced. Every angle, every move I was calculating. The warrant was fake. The coordination too perfect. Ryan had orchestrated this. Lena stepped forward, her eyes empty, her hand clutching Maddie's tightly. "Lena," I said, my voice trembling between fury and heartbreak. "You're really going along with this?" She didn't answer. She just stared down at me, her lips curling into something cruel. Ryan looked over his shoulder, smirking at her. "Told you he'd go quietly." Then, turning back to me, he knelt down, his voice low and venomous. "I'm taking your medals, your honor, your wife, and your precious little daughter, soldier." Maddie whimpered, trying to pull away from her mother. "Daddy." I tried to stand, but the officers shoved me back down. "Stay down," one of them barked. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head like he pitied me. "You really thought you could hide behind that hero act forever, didn't you? The good old American soldier, broken and forgotten." He turned to Lena. "You were right about him." That's when she spat. "Right on my uniform, right over the patch that bore my name and rank. He's a washed-up coward." The words burned worse than any wound I'd ever taken in combat. My own wife, spitting on the man who'd built her a life, a home, a family. Ryan laughed, standing tall. "Cuff him, boys. Let's put this hero in chains." Cold metal clamped around my wrists. I kept my head down, breathing slow, eyes focused on the floor. I'd faced ambushes, interrogations, near death, but nothing compared to this. The betrayal, the humiliation. Maddie was crying now. Calling my name as Lena pulled her away. "Mommy, stop." He didn't do anything. Lena ignored her, whispering something I couldn't hear. I looked up at Ryan. He was watching me, savoring the moment like a man tasting victory. That was his mistake, because what he saw kneeling before him wasn't a defeated man, it was a patient one. I straightened slowly, ignoring the hands gripping my arms. My voice dropped to a calm, lethal whisper. "You boys have no idea who you're putting hands on." And in that instant, the house went silent. Chapter 6, One Call. The cuffs bit into my wrists as Ryan strutted back and forth in my living room like a conquering hero. The SWAT team had torn through my home, medals ripped from the wall, drawers overturned, photo frames shattered on the hardwood. My daughter's drawings lay trampled beneath their boots. Ryan's smirk was wider than ever. "You see, Lena, justice always catches up eventually," he said, his voice oily with satisfaction. "Even for America's golden boy." Lena didn't answer. She stood near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, avoiding my gaze. Her eyes were red, but her face was stone. She had made her choice. One of the officers pressed a hand on my shoulder, shoving me down into a dining chair. Ryan leaned closer, his voice dripping arrogance. "Any last words, soldier?" I lifted my eyes to meet his, steady, unreadable. "Yeah," I said evenly. "I want my phone call." Ryan blinked, then snorted a laugh. What is this, a movie? You think you get a phone call? It's my right, I said, voice calm, unshaken. Even under your fabricated warrant. That hit him. His jaw twitched, a flicker of irritation cutting through his cocky grin. Fine, he said finally, signaling to one of his men. Give the Boy Scout his call. Let's hear who he cries to. They dropped my phone onto the table in front of me. My hands were still cuffed, so Ryan leaned over mockingly, holding the device up like I was a child. Go ahead, hero. Call whoever you think can save you. He was expecting desperation, maybe a lawyer, maybe a buddy from work. He wasn't ready for what came next. I took a deep breath, the kind I hadn't taken since my last deployment. When I spoke, my voice was no longer that of a broken husband or a cornered man. It was the voice of Sergeant Logan Steele, Task Force Viper, the one they used to call Ghost Line. Dial Phoenix, I said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Phoenix? What's that? Your code name for your therapist. The others laughed. Lena even smiled faintly, a cruel little twitch at the corner of her mouth. But then the line clicked. A single word came through the speaker, distorted, gravelly, unmistakably military. Authenticate. The room went still. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Ryan frowned. What the hell? Echo. Bravo. 6. Niner. Steele. I said, my tone steady, rehearsed. Initiate fallback protocol. I've been compromised. There was a short pause on the line. Then a calm voice replied. Confirmed. Stand by, Ghost Line. Ryan's expression faltered. Who is that? He demanded. But I didn't answer. My eyes locked on his as I spoke the final words into the phone. This location is burned. Full containment. Execute Delta Sweep. A metallic click. The line went dead. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the hum of static from the dead phone line. Ryan finally scoffed, forcing a laugh to break the tension. Nice act, soldier. Who'd you just call, huh? The Avengers? The officers chuckled uncertainly, but there was something off in the air now, something they couldn't name. The laughter sounded hollow. Get him outside, Ryan barked, suddenly irritated. I'm done wasting time. They dragged me to my feet, pushing me toward the front door. My boots scraped against the floor, stepping through the wreckage of my own home. I glanced once at Lena. She turned her face away. Outside, the sirens had stopped. The neighbors were gathered behind police tape, whispering, filming. Maddie wasn't in sight, probably taken somewhere safe. My chest tightened. Ryan followed close behind, his voice low in my ear. You think some phone call's gonna save you? You're finished, Steele. You don't have a life anymore. You don't have a wife. You don't have a daughter. I didn't answer. I just looked down the long suburban street, quiet, too quiet. They shoved me into the back of a police SUV. Ryan slammed the door shut and tapped the roof, laughing as he walked toward his own vehicle. Enjoy the view, soldier. It's the last sunrise you'll see as a free man. He turned his back, talking with his men, checking his gear. But something in his posture changed, the confidence slipping, replaced by a subtle unease. Because at the far end of the cul-de-sac, past the line of police cruisers and curious onlookers, a convoy of black SUVs had appeared. Unmarked, tinted, silent. They didn't belong to local law enforcement. One of Ryan's men called out, Captain, you expecting backup? Ryan squinted toward the approaching vehicles. His smirk began to fade. And for the first time that morning, I saw it, a flicker of doubt in the eyes of the man who thought he'd taken everything from me. Chapter 7. The Real Chain of Command. The black SUVs rolled to a slow, deliberate stop at the end of the street. Engines idling low, no sirens, no flashing lights, just the sound of power moving in silence. Ryan frowned, shielding his eyes against the morning sun. Who the hell are they? He muttered. No one answered. Even his SWAT officers shifted uneasily, gripping their rifles tighter. Something about the convoy didn't fit. These weren't local feds, and they sure as hell weren't here for backup. The first SUV door opened. A man in a dark gray suit stepped out, tall, expression unreadable behind black sunglasses. Another followed, then two more, all dressed the same, crisp suits, earpieces, the quiet precision of people used to command. Ryan barked, "Identify yourselves. This is an active federal operation." The man in front ignored him and started walking straight toward me. Inside the police SUV, I sat cuffed, watching through the cracked windshield. The sunlight caught a glint on the man's lapel, an insignia I hadn't seen in years. My pulse quickened. It was the Phoenix sigil. The lead agent stopped just short of Ryan, who planted himself squarely in the man's path. "You can't just waltz into my scene," Ryan snapped. "This is under my jurisdiction. You're interfering with a lawful arrest." The agent finally spoke, his tone calm but cutting. "Detective Davis, this is no longer your operation." Ryan laughed, incredulous. "Like hell it isn't. You got ID? You even FBI?" The agent didn't bother flashing a badge. Instead, he simply nodded toward one of his men. The second agent stepped forward, producing a small black folder. He opened it for less than a second, just enough for Ryan to glimpse what was inside. Whatever he saw made his mouth close mid-retort. His expression changed, confusion first, then dawning fear. The agent said, "You're ordered to stand down." Immediately, I don't take orders from," Ryan started, voice rising. The agent leaned in slightly, lowering his sunglasses. His eyes were the kind you didn't argue with. "You do now." Around us, the air shifted. The SWAT officers looked at each other uncertainly. One of them lowered his weapon. Another took a step back. Ryan turned in disbelief. "Hold your positions. That's an order." The agents didn't move. One raised a hand to his earpiece. "Control, we're green." Proceeding with retrieval. A black SUV door opened behind them. A woman stepped out, sharp suit, blonde hair tied back in a tight bun, tablet in hand. She walked up to the lead agent and nodded toward me. "Is that him?" He gave a single nod. "Steele." Ryan sputtered. "Steele? You're here for him? He's under arrest." The woman turned to Ryan, her voice brisk and unflinching. "Correction. He was under false arrest. Your warrant was fabricated and improperly logged. Your unit is hereby relieved of duty." Ryan's face flushed red. "You can't do that." "I'm a local detective," she interrupted smoothly, "with no federal clearance and zero authority to execute a cross-jurisdictional raid. This operation is terminated." Now, two of her men approached the SWAT officers, their movements swift and practiced. In seconds, the situation flipped. The armed men who had stormed my house just minutes ago were now being ordered to lower their weapons. Ryan spun back toward me, fury boiling in his voice. "What is this, Logan? Who the hell are these people?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Chain of command, detective. The real one." The rear door of the SUV opened, and the lead agent gestured for me to step out. "Mr. Steele," he said respectfully, "you're free to go." One of the agents unlocked my cuffs. The moment they clicked open, I rubbed my wrists, the skin raw, but my composure unbroken. Ryan stormed up, shouting, "You can't just take him. He's a suspect." The agent turned to him, his tone final. "Mr. Steele is not a suspect. He's under our protection." Lena, who had been standing by the porch with Maddie, froze. The color drained from her face. "Under your protection?" she whispered, barely audible. The woman agent turned to her, gaze impassive. "Mrs. Steele, your husband's clearance is classified at a level you wouldn't understand. You've made a grave mistake." Lena's lips trembled. I didn't know." "No," I said quietly, stepping closer. "You never cared to." Ryan stood there, jaw tight, rage simmering behind his eyes, as the agents formed a perimeter around me. "This isn't over, Steele," he hissed. The lead agent looked at him. "For your sake, detective, it should be." The convoy doors opened in unison. I slid into the back seat of the central SUV, the door closing behind me with a dull thud that felt like a full stop to the chaos. Through the tinted glass, I watched as Ryan argued with the agents, his voice rising, his power slipping through his fingers. Lena stood in the yard, face pale and empty, realization sinking in like poison. She had chosen the wrong man to betray, and now she knew it. Chapter 8. Ashes of the Home. The scene outside my home had turned from chaos to Judgment Day. Red and blue lights faded against the black SUV's matte finish. The SWAT officers stood disarmed, their weapons confiscated. Ryan was still shouting, his voice cracking with panic as two federal agents pinned him against his own cruiser. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he barked, twisting against the cuffs. "Actually," the lead agent replied coolly, "we do. You're a detective who forged a federal warrant and impersonated a Homeland liaison. That's 10 years minimum." Ryan's protests grew weaker as they recited his rights. The swagger that had once filled his every move drained away, replaced by sweat and disbelief. You can't arrest me. Lena, tell them. Tell them I was just doing my job." His voice broke on her name. Lena stood a few feet away, arms crossed over her chest, as if holding herself together. Her mascara ran in thin black trails down her cheeks. Her lips trembled when she finally spoke. "He said you'd never find out," she whispered, voice cracking. I turned to her slowly. The air between us was heavy, thick with the smell of gunpowder and betrayal. "And you believed him?" She shook her head desperately. "Logan, please, you have to understand," I thought. I cut her off with a look. I didn't need to hear another lie. I'd spent months drowning in them. Every late night, every hushed phone call, every cent that wasn't mine, this was the culmination. Lena took a hesitant step closer. I was scared. "You were always distant, quiet, stuck in your own head." Ryan made me feel seen. Her words were knives, every one twisting deeper. "And now?" I asked softly. Her breath caught. She looked around, the agents, the neighbors watching, Ryan being shoved into the back of a federal vehicle. And for the first time, I saw her understand the depth of her mistake. "Logan, I'm sorry. Please don't take Maddie away from me." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The part of me that once wanted to fix things, to reason, to forgive was gone. All that remained was silence. One of the agents approached quietly, holding out a clipboard. "Mr. Steele will handle the legal side of this. You're cleared. Your property will be secured, but we'll need to run forensics on the scene." I nodded. "Do what you have to." He hesitated, studying me for a moment. "If I may, sir, you handle that with restraint most men wouldn't." "Restraint," I repeated quietly, glancing at the shattered front door. "That's what they call it now." He gave a small nod, then turned to leave. I walked back inside the house. It didn't feel like a home anymore, just a graveyard of memories. My military medals lay scattered on the floor, mixed with broken glass. A family photo, Lena, Maddie, and me at the lake, was cracked down the middle, the lines splitting between us like a scar. I crouched down, picking it up carefully. My thumb brushed across my daughter's smile, the one pure thing left in my life. Maddie peeked out from behind the staircase, clutching her stuffed bear. "Daddy, are we going somewhere?" I looked at her, my voice softening. "Yeah, sweetheart. We're going somewhere new." She nodded, trusting, innocent. The kind of trust one didn't deserve but would die to protect. Upstairs, I grabbed a small duffel bag from the closet. Clothes for me and Maddie. Her favorite storybook. The photo of my unit from our last deployment. Nothing else. The medals stayed where they were. They didn't mean much now. Symbols of loyalty, honor, brotherhood, all things that had no place here anymore. As I zipped the bag shut, Lena appeared in the doorway. Her voice broke. "Logan, please don't go. We can fix this. I'll tell them everything. You already did," I said flatly. "You told them who I was, what I wasn't. You sold out the one man who'd never hurt you." Tears streamed down her face as she fell to her knees. "I didn't know what I was doing. Ryan said you were dangerous, that you had secrets." I stopped in front of her, the duffel slung over my shoulder. "He was right about one thing," I said quietly. "I do have secrets. The difference is I know how to keep them." Her breath hitched. "Logan, please, I love you." I stepped past her without looking back. Outside, the agents were already pulling away with Ryan in custody. Neighbors whispered from their lawns, phones out, capturing a story they'd never understand. Maddie ran to me, her small hand slipping into mine. "Are we leaving, Mommy?" she asked softly. I knelt to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "For now, baby. Just for now." Lena stumbled out onto the driveway as I opened the car door. "You can't take her. She's my daughter." I turned, eyes steady, voice cold as steel. "No, Lena. She's our daughter, and she deserves better than this." She reached out as if to grab my arm, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "Goodbye, Lena." Her scream followed us as I pulled away, raw, desperate, echoing off the ruined walls of the home we'd built together. In the rearview mirror, I saw her collapse onto the pavement, clutching the empty air where Maddie's hand used to be. The house shrank behind us, swallowed by distance and sunlight. All that was left of that life was ashes. Chapter 9. Reconstruction. 6 months later, the man staring back at me in the mirror was a stranger, older, quieter, and made of edges that hadn't been there before. The beard had grown and rough, streaked with gray. The eyes looked harder, like someone who'd seen too much and stopped trying to forget it. But the difference wasn't just on the outside. Something deeper had changed, something that couldn't be repaired. The nightmares had faded, but the silence after them lingered. The kind of silence that made you question whether peace was just another form of numbness. I now lived in a quiet town in northern Colorado, tucked between the mountains. It wasn't much, a small cabin near a lake, a gravel driveway, and a patch of sky that stayed open and clean. Maddie loved it. She'd learned to ride her bike here, chasing the wind through pine needles and morning fog. By day, I worked again, not for anyone else, but for myself. After the fallout, word got around through old contacts. I started taking contracts, training private security units, veterans, ex-law enforcement, even corporate bodyguards who thought they knew what loyalty meant until I showed them what it really looked like. I drilled them in discipline, control, respect, the very virtues that had once defined my marriage before they'd been turned into weapons against me. Loyalty, I told them during one session, isn't blind trust. It's a choice you make every day, knowing it can destroy you, and choosing it anyway. They'd listen, nodding, some understanding, some pretending to, but no one ever asked where that lesson came from. Maybe they could see it in my eyes. When the sun went down and the recruits left, I'd stand in the training field alone, the dry earth beneath my boots, the wind whispering through the mountains. I'd close my eyes and let the quiet wash over me. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was close enough. Inside the cabin, Maddie's laughter always broke the stillness. She was growing fast, tougher than I'd expected. The innocence in her had taken hits, sure, but kids are resilient. She didn't cry for her mother anymore, not like she used to. Still, some nights the questions came. That evening, the fire crackled low in the hearth. Maddie sat cross-legged on the rug, coloring in one of her sketchbooks. I was at the table, sorting through some old paperwork for my next training contract. The smell of wood smoke and cocoa filled the room. "Daddy," she said quietly. I looked up from the files. "Yes, sweetheart." Her pencil paused. She didn't look at me right away. "Will Mommy ever come back?" The question hit harder than I expected. For a long moment, all I could do was stare into the fire. The orange glow danced against the walls, flickering over framed photos, just her and me now. I walked over and knelt beside her. "Come here," I said softly. She crawled into my lap, small and warm, her head resting against my chest. "What made you ask that?" I said. She shrugged. "Some of the kids at school, they have both parents. I just wondered if Mommy might come see us one day." I took a deep breath, brushing her hair back. "Sweetheart, sometimes people make choices they can't take back. And sometimes," I hesitated, choosing the words carefully, "sometimes you don't want them to." She looked up at me with those same blue eyes that used to belong to Lena, those softer, kinder. "You mean you don't want Mommy to come back?" I managed a small smile. "Some things, sweetheart, you don't want back." She thought about that for a while. Kids have a way of accepting hard truths more easily than adults do. She nodded slowly, then turned back to her drawing. A minute later, she said, "I like it better here anyway." I kissed the top of her head. "Me too, kiddo." When she went to bed, I stepped outside onto the porch. The night air was cool, crisp. The lake reflected the stars like a broken mirror. I leaned against the railing, feeling the wood creak beneath my hands. Somewhere out there, Lena was living with the consequences of her choices. I didn't keep tabs, but the world has a way of feeding you updates whether you ask for them or not. I'd heard she'd lost her job after the scandal. The precinct had distanced themselves from Ryan's corruption case, and anyone tied to it had been dragged through the mud. Ryan himself had been convicted 5 counts of falsifying evidence, obstruction, and impersonating a federal officer. He'd been transferred to a federal penitentiary in Virginia, where no badge or charm could save him. As for Lena, she'd gone back to the small town we'd both left behind years ago. Word was she lived alone now. Friends gone, reputation burned, everything she gambled for reduced to dust. There was a time when that would have given me satisfaction, when I would have wanted to see her broken the way I'd been broken. But standing there beneath the mountain sky, I realized it didn't matter anymore. She had chosen her path. I had chosen mine. The night wind carried the faint smell of pine and rain. Somewhere in the cabin behind me, Maddie stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about her new school. I exhaled slowly, watching my breath fade into the cold air. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was drowning in what I'd lost. The scars were still there, deep, invisible, permanent, but they no longer bled. And that, I supposed, was its own kind of healing. Chapter 10. The Soldier's Lesson. The morning was still, almost reverent, as I drove the long, winding road through the pine-lined hills. Mist clung to the trees like a whisper, curling around trunks and brushing the tops of wildflowers that stubbornly survived the early frost. Maddie sat in the back seat, her small fingers twisting in her lap. She didn't speak. She never did when I was about to face ghosts I couldn't explain to a 7-year-old. The cemetery came into view. White headstones stretched across the rolling green like a regiment at attention. Each one told a story of sacrifice, of battles fought and lives given. But I wasn't here for the nameless rose. I was here for one. The grave of Colonel James Hawk Mercer, my commander, my mentor, my father figure in uniform. The man who taught me more about honor, loyalty, and discipline than anyone else ever could. The man who'd always said, "Son, the battlefield isn't always outside. Sometimes it's in your own home." I parked the truck and stepped out, the cold morning air biting at my face. Maddie ran ahead a few steps, then paused respectfully, her eyes wide as she took in the quiet grandeur of the place. I followed her slowly, boots crunching on frost-hardened earth, until I reached the familiar black granite. My hand brushed over the engraved letters. I had brought the last medal from the collection I'd left behind, the one awarded for valor during a mission that had gone sideways, but had saved a unit. It was the medal that, in a different life, would have hung proudly on my chest, a reminder of duty fulfilled. Today, it felt heavier. I knelt, placing it gently on the base of the headstone. The metal glinted in the pale sunlight, catching the morning dew. "Maddie," I said softly, "do you know what this is?" She nodded, stepping closer. "It's a medal. You won it, Daddy." I smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, but it's more than that. It's a reminder that sometimes doing the right thing isn't the easiest choice. That sometimes people will try to break you, and you won't even see it coming." She listened, tilting her head, eyes wide and innocent. I stayed there for a long moment, letting the wind carry the words I couldn't take back. Memories surged, Lena's betrayal, Ryan's smirk, the raid, the firestorm of lies and humiliation. How I'd been stripped of my home, my wife, my dignity. But I'd survived. More than that, I'd rebuilt, and I was stronger for it. I lost a lot, I said quietly, almost to myself. Everything I loved, to see what I'd become without it. Maddie tugged gently on my sleeve. "Are you sad, Daddy?" I shook my head slowly. "No, kiddo, not sad anymore. Just aware." I placed a hand on her small shoulder. Sometimes, the lesson is harsher than the pain. But the lesson is what matters. It reminds you who you are. I stood, looking down at the medal and the name engraved in the stone. Colonel Mercer would have smiled at the irony. Me, learning my hardest lesson not on a battlefield overseas, but in the quiet violence of betrayal and loss at home. I took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. They took everything I loved to see what I'd become without it. I said, voice steady, measured. Turns out, I didn't need saving, I needed reminding. Maddie's hand found mine, small and warm, tugging gently as if to anchor me to the present. I squeezed back, letting her feel the weight of trust and protection. We walked away together, boots crunching softly on the frosted grass. The dawn stretched across the horizon in muted oranges and pinks, painting long shadows that reached out like quiet soldiers at attention. Behind us, the black granite gleamed under the rising sun, the metal catching the first rays, a silent testament to courage, discipline, and endurance. As we reached the gravel road, Maddie skipped slightly, humming a tune she had made up herself. I smiled faintly, feeling something I hadn't in months, a faint, fragile sense of hope. The wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere in its swirl, I imagined Colonel Mercer's voice again, firm but kind. "You've learned well, soldier. Now walk forward with your head high." I glanced down at Maddie, then out at the horizon. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what had been lost. I was thinking about what still remained. The road ahead was uncertain, long, and lined with choices. But with her hand in mine and the lessons of the past etched deep into my heart, I knew I would never walk it blindly again. And as the sun rose fully, painting the sky in fire and gold, I stepped forward, carrying the weight of the past and the promise of tomorrow. The camera pans out. Logan walks away under dawn light, Maddie's hand in his. A haunting, powerful ending.